Of course, SmackDown is leaving broadcast cable. It is leaving Fox in October 2024 to return back to the USA Network, which of course hosted the Blue brand from 2016 to 2019 at the beginning of what was the second WWE brand split. Now, it's very interesting because WWE got $1.4 billion, which is a massive number over 5 years to not only leave broadcast but return to the USA Network. But with that move, WWE Monday Night Raw and NXT will reportedly be leaving the USA Network, which is a very interesting decision. Now, we all know media rights deals are very controversial and are happening right now all over the sports landscape. The NBA is negotiating their media rights deal, and WWE obviously was in the middle of negotiating SmackDown. Now they're negotiating Raw and NXT, which reportedly has multiple suitors. Now, in this day and age of technology and the internet, not only is there broadcast television, which is obviously, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. Obviously, there's all the cable networks, but then you also have streaming. And WWE, as we know, was one of the first organizations way back in 2014 to take the WWE network and put it on a streaming platform. Many people at the time thought that would eventually be Raw, SmackDown, and nobody even thought of NXT being a legitimate third brand at that point. But that's where people legitimately thought Raw and SmackDown would go, as obviously cable numbers decline, streaming numbers increase. To that point, it has not happened. Now, we know WWE has had a great relationship with NBC Universal. It's been hosting Raw for damn near the last 20 years and more than that. Obviously, 1993 to 2000 and then 2005 to now. So outside of a 5-year period, Raw has been on the USA Network for pretty much its whole life. We know SmackDown has had different cable channels, the CW, My Network TV, Sci-Fi, USA, Fox. We know SmackDown has always moved around more than Raw. But listen, I love the WWE on Fox era. I understand for Fox's sake, they feel like they didn't get enough money out of the deal for what they were paying for. Yet SmackDown still won the 1849 demographic. They still had great total viewers. They were dominating the night on Friday night. But reportedly, I think Fox feels like they can get some more college basketball, some more college football, and renewing the WWE rights just wasn't up their sleeve. So WWE decides to leave broadcast television every single week, but they're still going to be on broadcast 4 times a year, one per quarter with NBC as a part of this NBC Universal agreement. It sounds like they're going to be bringing back Saturday night's main event, which I called for when Fox returned with SmackDown in 2019. It did not happen. I'm glad to see this change. The interesting part about this, as I said, there's broadcast, there's cable, there's streaming. Where does Raw and NXT end up? It sounds like WWE wants to package them. I don't think they want to have 3 different TV partners. I think 2 sounds like the realistic move. So because of that, I do not think it's going to end up on Amazon Prime. In my opinion, I think that Amazon Prime would want Raw, but obviously it sounds like that they would not obviously want NXT. So maybe you do go back to NBC Universal and try to negotiate something, put NXT on the USA Network. But I do think that Raw and NXT both are going to end up on cable, and I think they're going to end up on FX. And I do think it's possible that NXT potentially moves nights from Tuesday to Wednesday night. Once again, goes head-to-head with AEW Dynamite, as NXT has now gained momentum, as WWE has put some main roster stars like Becky Lynch, like Dominic Mysterio, on NXT to make it feel like a legitimate third brand again. And I think the whole conversation around Monday Night Raw is that WWE is, believe it or not, open to moving Raw off Monday nights. It does sound like that Friday Night SmackDown is going to stay on Friday nights on the USA Network. WWE had said in the past they are open to SmackDown moving Friday nights, But now I think with this UFC TKO merger, it sounds like they want SmackDown Friday, UFC Saturday, potentially a WWE premium live event, maybe one of the smaller premium live events on a Sunday. Of course, they just announced they're going to Australia for Elimination Chamber, February 2024. That is a great move. I cannot wait for that show. But in general, again, it sounds like SmackDown Friday, UFC pay-per-view Saturday, potentially a B-level WWE premium live event on a Sunday. Raw-wise, there has been talk of Raw, yes, actually moving off Monday nights. Raw has been on Monday nights since its 30-year inception in 1993, but we all know football now is almost bigger than ever. They're getting crushed by Monday Night Football. They're getting record low viewership. A match between, I think it was Tommaso Ciampa and Giovanni Vinci this past Monday night on Raw had the lowest viewed watch rate for a Raw match live in its history, and Raw is not a bad show. They're doing a lot right now with Jey Uso, with Cody and Sammy and the Judgment Day and Rollins and Nakamura. Obviously, on the SmackDown side, we got the Bloodline, we got LA Knight, we got everything going on with Asuka, Io Sky, Charlotte, and the women's division. There's a lot happening right now on both brands. It's just obviously SmackDown. There's no football competition. They have Roman Reigns. There's broadcast on Fox. There's a lot going right now on SmackDown. We're Raw, has to deal with obviously NBA playoff coverage in May and June. They have to deal with football on Monday night that SmackDown does not have to deal with. So there's a lot of competition right now on Raw. And that's why moving nights seems more realistic than what previously thought. Now, I do think that Raw and NXT are going to actually end up with Disney, but I don't think Raw is going to go to ABC, though that could certainly be a possibility. Though if they do that, they're definitely going to have to move Raw off Monday nights because ABC is going to be simulcasting, a lot of the Monday Night Football games during the fall. I actually think, and this was a rumor a little while back, I think Raw and NXT both end up on FX. And I think you have Raw Monday, NXT Wednesday, going head-to-head once again with Dynamite, and then SmackDown Friday with the occasional Saturday night's main event going head-to-head with Collision. That means you have WWE programming, NXT Wednesday, SmackDown Friday going up against Rampage, and then, as I said, the occasional Saturday night's main event, along with the premium live events on a Saturday. It means they have competition for AEW everywhere. And then when AEW runs a Sunday pay-per-view, they can run one of the B-level premium live events or an NXT premium live event. I think WWE wants to make sure that less and less people are watching AEW, and it may hurt some of their viewership, and I think they understand that. But from TKO's perspective, they went with the contract that gave them the most money, and that's $1.4 billion, which is a 40% increase over what Fox is paying them. It's a great deal for WWE. I understand why they made that decision. Now, I personally, again, love the SmackDown and Fox era. I thought it'd be worth it for Fox to re-up. I think Fox and WWE have had a good, not a great relationship, but a good relationship. And SmackDown is the #1 show on broadcast, cable, and streaming of Friday nights. In the end, though, USA Network wanted the blue brand, and it'll be interesting to see now if they're both on cable. If Raw is on FX, if SmackDown's on USA Network. Because right now we all agree SmackDown is the 8th show, even though Raw is 3 hours with Roman Reigns and stuff like that. SmackDown is the 8th show. If they're both on cable, it'll be interesting to see if they have an A or a B show, and if Raw potentially goes back to 2 hours. Now with them leaving the USA Network, I assume that they are able to negotiate in that contract. Does somebody like FX or ABC, do they want Raw to only be 2 hours? And vice versa then, does SmackDown on the USA Network turn into the 3-hour show? Do they extend SmackDown from 8 to 11 on Friday nights, basically expanding against Rampage and taking out all of the AEW competition? So again, very interesting. The NBA media rights deal, we'll see what happens with that. But I wanted to focus, on the SmackDown media rights deal. I think it's a good deal for WWE. I think that they are looking for more deals, and I think the future of WWE right now looks extremely bright. And I'm interested to see how SmackDown looks when it comes to the USA Network in 2024 and who gets that Raw and NXT contracts. Well, I just got done talking about the media rights between obviously Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. Something else that happened on Thursday was obviously a bunch of wrestlers cut. Now, they say it's due to budget cuts. We know that obviously Endeavor was looking to cut and try to trim the fat off the WWE contract and off some wrestlers that weren't really being used. Now, a lot of these cuts, I know a lot of people are upset, and it's upsetting, yes, when people lose their jobs. But these people, like Mustafa Ali, he was a little bit relevant on NXT, never really got over for me on the main roster. Emma was barely used. Top Dollar barely used. Rick Boogs outside of Shinsuke Nakamura barely used. Riddick Moss outside of Baron Corbin barely used. Aaliyah barely used. Sean Benjamin outside of the run 2 years ago with Cedric Alexander and the Hurt Business barely used. I think the two that are the most shocking are definitely Dolph Ziggler because, he was a veteran talent, though he wasn't used for a long time either. He hasn't been seen probably in a couple of months. And then you have Elias, who after the Ezekiel gimmick just never got his foot back underneath him. He was over in 2018, 2019. That was peak Elias, and he never got back over that hump. So, a lot of these wrestlers, people are not, terribly upset with. They're not terribly used. I understand when they trim the fat off those wrestlers. Obviously, it sucks when people lose their job. The biggest release, in my opinion, was one that happened on Friday, and that was this guy behind me, my virtual background on YouTube, the original bro, Matt Riddle. Because Riddle, yes, he had an expensive contract, but Riddle was, a mid-card staple. He had that great tag team run with RK Bro and Randy Orton, which seemingly put Riddle's career back on track. It even got him multiple main events and a spot with the undisputed Universal Champion, the head of the table, the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. But when Randy Orton got injured last year, it almost felt like Riddle was trending water. We had that feud with Seth Rollins that ended in that fight pit with Daniel Cormier as the special guest referee. But that feud, outside of the personal match that they had at Clash of the Castle, that never really got too off the ground. And then after that, again, Riddle was just kind of floating around. He had the little tag team over the last couple of weeks with Drew McIntyre. But outside of that, we know Riddle's been very controversial. We know he's had some issues, dating back, obviously, to the suspension of the drug use a couple times in that feud with Seth Rollins, dating back to the incident at the airport when they got back from India a couple weeks ago, where Riddle was reportedly sent home after that. And I think after that decision, WWE decided they just cut bait with Riddle. They waited an extra day, knowing that, hey, let's just trim the fat. Let's make Riddle his own story. Let's make it not about budget cuts. Let's make it a different reason why Riddle was released, which is why I think there's a possibility. Listen, we've seen guys rehired, like a Tegan Knox, like a Braun Strowman, like Nia Jax recently. I think there's a real case in a year or two, Riddle comes back, and maybe if Randy Orton gets back, we all want that RK Bro reunion that we did not get. RK Bro's last match together was that Undisputed Tag Team Championship match when they unified the titles with the Usos on SmackDown in May of 2022. We have not seen Randy Orton since, and I really felt like from that moment on, Riddle had some tag teams with Shinsuke Nakamura, and he was trying to work it out with Sami Zayn and everything going on. But it was all tied back to they were going to get RK Bro back together, and I think Riddle just had too many strikes against him. Listen, Riddle is a very thoughtful guy. Riddle is a great athlete, but he can rub some shoulders the wrong way, and that's ultimately why he got released. Great talent. I think he's going to find success outside of the WWE. I think there's a chance that he could come back. Now, I understand, Triple H tried to fill in some depth with some of these guys. Obviously, Top Dollar of Hit Row, which I'm surprised they didn't release the entirety of Hit Row. Emma, among a couple. There's thought Xia Li could have been cut. Tegan Knox, who was brought back under Triple H. There are definitely some wrestlers underutilized, Rick Boogs, Dana Brooke, who also just got cut. But, WWE's roster is still talented. It still has depth. I understand why they wanted to add depth to the bottom of the roster because sometimes it doesn't feel that way. But ultimately, when you're not being used because you're not getting over with the crowd, and some of these wrestlers, even the ones that Triple H brought back when he took over from Vince in July 22, were not getting over with the crowd. So I'm not as upset with every one that those releases happened. Again, I think the big one here is Riddle was cut on Friday night for more personal reasons rather than budget cuts. We wish Riddle is best. I think Riddle is going to be back in WWE soon. But ultimately, as we know, WWE, the machine, will carry on as usual. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.